What's up YouTube? Back again with another quick video. Basically, I just want to let you guys know that I'm actually getting back into the hobby. I was actually gone for a little while. I kind of got busy with school and life, and unfortunately, I didn't really take care of my tanks while I was gone, and that led to algae and not even changing my water, the buildup of bacteria and just waste inside my tanks. And so I had a huge die off of plants, lights, equipment, fish, animals, everything into my tank essentially. So I got new plants, I got some new fish, and there's some old plants and some old fish in there also. But basically, right now we're looking at my bottom right tank. If we have time, we'll go cycle through the other tanks briefly also to see what's new or what's the same in there. You'll probably see there's some plants that are the same, and most of the fish, if not all of the fish, are new. So again, this is my bottom right tank, and we'll cycle through the other tanks a little bit later. So let's check out some plants. So the plant we have right here, if you notice the Tupperwares, most of these Tupperwares are all brand spanking new, with the exception of a few, like maybe that one. So with that being said, the substrate's new, that there's not a lot of buildup of beneficial bacteria in the Tupperware. So just to give you a quick reminder, a quick breakdown of what I keep inside my Tupperwares is, I believe this is Seachem fluorite, I believe. And then 2/3 of it is Seachem fluoride. The bottom 1/3 is actually just soil with some fertilizer. I believe it's EcoCope. And the plant we're actually looking at is I believe Hygrophila sunset. Now, the reason why I actually bought this plant from CK Aquatics up in West Covina is because the leaf, the design of the leaf, basically, I think the veins are really attractive. The white vein, you don't really see that in plants that often. And then the tips of the plant actually get really pink. The reason why this specific plant isn't looking so hot is because, one, I grew it out for a couple weeks and I cut it to repropagate it, so it's kind of bouncing back, and I just moved it to a new Tupperware, so the substrate may not be that beneficial just yet for plants. So eventually, when there's a lot of fish waste and more bacteria that lives inside the gravel will be more seasoned to grow plants. But right now, it's getting there. So yeah. So moving on, we have another plant over here. I'm not too sure what plant this is because I got it in a tissue culture. Machinandra or something like that. I'm not too sure, but we'll figure that out a little bit later. Yeah, I got it from CK Aquatics with in a tissue culture. So, like I said, a lot of these plants are still bouncing back. This one's no different. So not bouncing back, but settling in. We're gonna move over to this other new Tupperware. You'll see two different plants in there. To the left, we have a red Tiger Lotus with its bulb to the right of it. And if we zoom in a little bit closer, there you go. You'll see the leaf structures that are actually breaking apart. Again, this is why. This is because I just planted in this new substrate, so probably didn't like to be disrupted. But you'll see new growth right there in the center, and that's a new leaf of one of the Tiger Lotuses coming out. And obviously this plant gets a lot larger and a lot taller. It's just, like I said, getting settled in. And to the right of that, we have another slow-growing plant, Megalandra moboldii red. Now this plant, once it gets grown really big, the leaves have like a sheen of red, which is pretty exciting. I can't wait till it gets that big. We're gonna migrate over here to our left, continuing on with our fish and plants, or just plants. This plant might look really familiar. Now this plant is Stargine repens. The one I had last time was in the same Tupperware, but like I said, died off, so I bought a new tissue culture. I grew those guys up maybe like 1.5 inches and cut them all down and replanted them, so they're getting settled in. You'll see that the substrate is actually very seasoned. There's, I think this one might be 1/3 dirt and then 2/3 Seachem fluorite. Moving to the left, I don't know if you guys know what plant this is, but we'll get nice and close up. So these plants are actually called Pocus and Erectus. Now you're probably thinking, oh, aren't those like really big plants? Yes, they are. But I bought these in a tissue culture from Boost Plants, and I'm gonna be honest, these take a while to get situated, and I've had this for maybe a little bit less than 3 weeks. This is a new Tupperware. It was actually growing in this Tupperware for about a month already. So Yeah, I moved it over, so it's getting settled in. This plant will eventually reach the surface of this tank. It's a really tall plant, so I'm going to assume that eventually it's going to reach the surface. But right now, I just need it away from any shade so I can expedite the growing process of that plant. Right behind that, we have a sword plant, which is a Reuben red sword. I bought this from CK Aquatics maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that, and like I said, it's still getting settled in. Like most of these plants are pretty new, so there's still growth to be changed. It still needs to transform. This one is pretty much done already, but relatively new plant still, along with the fish and stuff like that in this tank. And I know in the previous video I said I didn't really use filters in my tanks. Well, surprise, there's a sponge filter in there. And the reason I put that in there is because I was re-jump starting my tanks, and I would have like a lot of bacteria that wasn't keeping up with my water changes and the flexing fish load. So I opted to put a sponge in here just so to keep the fish happy and beneficial bacteria breaking down that waste. But again, with the plants, all the way in the back, we have a Cryptic Horn, and I believe it's like a red tiger band, something like that, something red tiger. I actually bought that from Aquatic Warehouse in San Diego for $17, so it was pretty pricey, but don't regret it. I really like the plant, and one thing I really find attractive about this plant, and just like the plant in front of it, is it actually has a green vein that runs through the plant. And I don't know if you see a repeating theme, or not really repeating, but I really like interesting looking plants. Now I don't know if this plant right here looks too familiar, but that plant right there you're looking at in the center, the big bushy plant, is actually my Cryptic Horn Lutea, and that's my original one. And yeah, so nothing really new about that. Survived that really bad algae kind of ignoring phase of my fish keeping career, or my plant taking career. So I'm just glad I survived, and there it is, thriving again in this newer setup, or this updated setup. Right here's another old plant that we had before. It is Alternaria Reniki pink, and I just actually cut it to repropagate it, so the bush is a lot smaller, a lot more close to the ground, but this one actually grows pretty large also. Right behind that we have Bacopa Carly Nia. This is one of my newer ones. What I found out about with this plant is the root structure is actually really strong on this plant, so it grows really root dependent. I was actually pretty surprised, and once it reaches the tip of the water, these tips will actually get a little bit pink. I don't know if you could pick that up, but there's a slight pink hue to these plants right here. So once they reach the surface, they'll get a really nice pink tone, and I'm sure if I add iron to it, it'll look a little bit nicer. Last plant, but not least, probably one of my new favorites right here, is Lugia Cuba. So you'll see the leaf structure. It's actually really small and thin and sharp looking, almost spindly. I believe that's why I'm so attracted to this plant. I mean, the Pocus Erectus is cool too, but it doesn't get that pink tone. If we move up here to look at a bigger stem, the leaves on the very tip are actually really pink, and the stem is actually red in the center. So I love how it goes from, like a lime green pink down here to like a nice soft pink up top. So I think that's pretty cool. Last plant but not least, we have Bacopa Bonsai, I believe, or not even Bacopa, it's Armenia Bonsai or something like that, something bonsai. But this was also a tissue culture plant that I bought from Aquatic or Pet Zone maybe. Now this plant, it grows up tall, or not tall, but it grows up mid-range, and this is about maybe 5 inches right now, and the stem grows up straight, so that's pretty cool, because a lot of these plants kind of grow all over the place. I need some plants to grow up just straight, like the Pocus Erectus. But this plant gets nice pink tips, but basically that's all. Let's back it up. So that's everything new in this bottom right tank in my tank fish rack. As far as fish load goes, we have green tiger barbs, Siamese algae eaters, Florida flagfish, some plecos that are from my old stock. Those 3 fish that I named out before, those flagfish, tiger barbs, and Siamese algae eaters, those guys are new. As far as future tank ideas or plans, my most current plan or project thing that I need to do in my tanks is, if you notice the tank glass, it's a little bit scratchy, it's a little bit distracting, actually very distracting. So I actually bought window tint to tint the front side of these tanks to actually turn around these tanks. So in the future we'll be observing through the back end of these tanks that are less scratched up, because I actually never brought the reason why the glass is scratched up is because I cleaned it with a sponge, and the sponge held debris in it and it scratched up my glass. So for future reference, don't use a sponge when you're cleaning the glass, because it's going to scratch your glass up, or in my experience that's what happens. So we're going to turn those tanks around, and then we'll have the back end, aka the front end, covered up, and then the back end of this tank right now should be less scratched up. So looking forward to that clear view. If not, if that doesn't work out, I might actually invest in newer tanks and just, you know, take care of my tanks a little bit better, because I was just a little bit newbie when I first got these 40s and kind of rushed into it. I didn't know that, you know, the sponge kept like particles inside the sponge and I was scratching it. So for future reference, if you have a tank with glass, don't use a sponge. But anyways, we'll probably move on to these two last tanks that I'm redoing real quick. So over here, this is actually an old tank with almost all these plants are old, but like I said, I haven't worked on this tank too much. But you know, you got the old crypt, we got wisteria in the back, and then Lutea, not Lutea, excuse me, crypt lucens. Forgot the name of the Lugia on the back. Those are my old Java ferns and Nubiuses and driftwood. So this tank is looking a little bit dirty, but we'll get back to it and we'll clean it up and we'll make it look nice in a few weeks. And going to the top tank, nothing really crazy to see here. I got this sword, chameleon sword from Pet Zone. I got this Lugia granduloso, and then we got the crypt spiralis over here. One thing I really like about this plant is, look at those leaves, dude. We got a nice red in the center, and then when they grow out they turn green, so maybe that's why they call it the chameleon sword. Also, we have a whole mess of Nubius rhizomes that I just split up and I cut up. Eventually they're going to grow, and I'm going to propagate it to the tank down below. So basically those are all my tanks. I'm going to end up with this tank once again real quick. And then, yeah, so those are basically all my tanks, and hopefully you guys came to watch this update, and hopefully stay tuned for my future videos. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.